Where's my diamonds?
All right. Good afternoon, commissioners, and welcome back.
Yes, welcome back to our afternoon work session for September 3rd, 2024. We have a few items on the agenda. We're going to talk about the interview process for future county council, and we're going to go over the 2025 legislative agenda for both agencies. Then we'll take a break. And then on board and leadership communication, I'd like to change the order around a little bit. So we'll do CWS leadership communication, and Clerk Moss has updated the packet to include a memo related to supportive housing services funding. So under board and leadership communication, we'll be going over that topic. So that's why I thought we'd take care of the clean water services stuff, take care of that. And then I'll leave it up to Ms. Angie and Ms. Duke-Dreesen to decide if they want to do their leadership communication first, and then we'll go to board communication, but they don't have to make that decision just yet. Okay, but so I wanted to lay out just a slight change of order. Okay, so let's dive in. Who's going to come? And it's Ann Ober and Heather Gantz. Welcome on our interview process for hiring a new county council.
Thank you, Chair. Ann Ober, ACA with County. Heather Gantz, Senior Manager with Raptels. And we're here today to just start the discussion around the interview panels and the way you'd like to have the interview structured for the new positions. We will not be discussing any of the applicants at this time, but you will be receiving information about those applicants. Next. Oh,
you have the pattern.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Just do you want to walk through this?
Sure. Just a reminder of our remaining timeline. We are in active recruitment phase now. I'm interviewing candidates. We'll be delivering confidential candidate materials to you on September 18th for our review and discussion in our executive session on October 1st.
Wow, my head just went snap. September 18th, we're talking about the middle of September already, and I'm still catching up to the fact that it's September.
It's only a few
talking about
weeks away.
2025, and then let's stop this.
Time is going by way too fast. Yes, sorry.
That's okay. Part of our discussion on the 1st, as we review candidates, will be determining who to move forward to the interview process. We feel confident that we would be able to do 4 candidates on October 29th. If we do more than 4, we would carry that over into a 2-day process. But at this point, we believe that we'd be able to move forward with a 1-day process on the 29th. And then we would reserve
the week that is. Is
It's
that
a Tuesday.
the 29th is a Tuesday?
Hold on.
Cool.
There you go. So we had reserved Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and I believe then you have the CWS event on Friday.
Yes, thank you very much.
And then that would we would reserve some additional time in November on the 13th, 14th, or 15th as needed. Not sure if we will need that time or not, but we'll know more, of course, on after the 29th. We'd want to talk a little bit.
Go for it.
You could be in control of the slides. This is a partnership Ann and I have here. We are recommending 3 panels plus a tour. We heard from you in our original conversation that you wanted to be able to provide the candidates with a tour of the county. The panels would be current and incoming county commissioners, the county leadership, the sheriff, County Administrator Angie, and all of the assistant county administrators, and then the county council staff would be the 3rd panel. Want to open it up for discussion and conversation if there's more that you'd like to see in a process outside of those 3 panels plus the tour.
Not for this position.
Are there things?
They're in terms of onboarding and who they'll meet relative to their role. That's a different set of folks, certainly much wider.
For the tour, Counselor Tracy, Commissioner Tracy, you had talked about wanting to make sure that they understood sort of the broader county perspective. Are there places you'd like to make sure we actually take them to see?
Can you move your mic? Oh,
I'm really sorry. I'm not really prepared to answer that, but I can answer it. I mean, I think understanding the breadth of the county and maybe even getting down south, getting to obviously the Wingspan, other places around.
That's great.
so I think I would like to suggest we chat about this
Sure.
a little bit
I'm
differently.
just not prepared.
There's onboarding and what to get familiar with. But if I think about this from outside candidates, right? We may get folks who are already here in Oregon, but not familiar with Washington County. And we may get folks outside of Oregon completely. So there's the job brochure talks about what Washington County is in general terms, but also what we as a county government are. So we, through our work, have talked about what does the playbook look like for the next few years and a little bit further. So for future challenges. So for that, I think that seeing our part of our public safety and justice stack of facilities, jail, community correction center, fine. The affordable housing, supportive housing services portfolio is something for onboarding, but I'm not sure to what degree that has too much import. I know the county council team does an incredible volume of contracts and agreements for transportation and land use, that whole stack. So what I'm trying to get at for that latter part is what do we want to make sure he, she, or they has a flavor of? And I don't know if that's a tour or just some information. So
And I think this is where you're heading. From my position, I think it should be candidate driven. So by the time you're down to the finalists,
what do they want to see?
yeah, what do they want to see and what do we want to make sure they see and know about? And I think, like you said, if where they're from will make a difference and just what they're aware of. So I don't think that it's a set.
And this is also feedback, Courtney, that I would appreciate you providing to this team. It goes to answer the question of why is legal work here in Washington County interesting, right? And that was something that Tom Carr gave us a flavor of as he came on board. So, you know, we're the second largest county in the state, one of 3 here in our metropolitan area. And is there anything about just our portfolio or our setup? Not that it's tour driven, but where somehow through presentations, meeting with the team, just, you know, an hour dialogue of what do you do about that? What do you do about this? Some kind of forum that allows for bringing that to life. So.
Yeah, Ms. Ober and I have had a couple conversations about that already, so I think that'll work perfectly for me to continue to work with the team on, you know, my experience onboarding here and experience over the last decade of what I think the candidates should know and would want to know.
Cool. Hey, another thing I didn't think of until just right now as well, but in terms of being a general government, if it's somebody from outside, Oregon has vote by mail, and we have an excellent elections department too. That may be something worth bringing to light as well.
Sounds wonderful. What I'm hearing is that we'll focus mostly on our facilities and future issues that we think might be coming up and just make sure that they get a flavor for the type of work that's coming.
Cool. Whether it's tour, presentations, first interview versus final, we want to make sure that they have an idea of what it is we're all about.
Sounds great.
Couple of comments on your slide. One, your first bullet under panelists. I appreciate you including Jason. I get the duty of appointing somebody, but I won't really serve with them. So I'm glad you're in doing that. On the last comment on others, frankly, the county council works for the board. We know that, and we understand that they work with others. The only thing that strikes me as not being addressed is how about the courts and the judges and the DA? We can have great feelings about anybody, but if they don't play well in a broader pool, that's a bit of a problem. And I don't know if any of the rest feel that way or not. Their staff, they have to get along with, obviously, from a working relationship, but from a broader perspective. I mean, I guess I'd have to ask our interim. I don't know how much you deal with across the way with our courts and with the DI. I would suspect a lot. And should they have a role?
Yeah, but there's more with county councils across the state and the
Well, that'd be
Association
another
of
one,
County
yeah.
Councils. But some of that is brought out both in terms of our questions of them and their participating in their position, and giving us concrete examples that exemplify how they work with others, how they've had to put together intergovernmental agreements, contracts, so forth with other parties. There are different ways to skin the cat.
Yeah, I understand. You just said others. That's the one that came to mind that I just didn't see, that if we're putting the sheriff on there and we're putting, administrative staff, with all due respect to all of them, they're not capable of necessarily understanding the legal aspect, nor would I. So that was my only thought. And I'll let it drop.
Thank you.
But Courtney, is there anything you wanted to add?
My initial thoughts are just, I feel very confident that whoever applies for this job is going to know how to work with elected judges with respect and cooperation and productively. But your point is well taken, and it's a kind of combination of Chair Harrington's comment and yours that, again, unique to counties is working closely with DAs as the DA, as those are county employees, or state employees, but we provide some general administrative work. So it is a bit of a unique situation. So we would want to make sure they understand that, which we can work on that.
Just a thought.
Next slides.
And I think that's it. We will be in executive, and in the coming weeks, we'll also figure out things like questions that you all would like to discern. So we can work on that with you, Commissioner Rogers.
Yep.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next, we're going to move on to federal and state legislative agendas. Who are we doing first?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. For the record, my name is Pablo Nieves Valenzuela. I'm a Government Relations Manager for the county.
Yes, good afternoon. Tracy Rainey, Government Relations Manager for Clean Water Services.
Good afternoon, everyone. Today I am playing Carly, but my actual name is Erin Doyle. I'm the Senior Government Relations Manager.
Yeah, so to outline our presentation today, we're going to start by going over the purpose and the policy questions that we're seeking your guidance on. We'll also talk about the 2025 federal legislative agenda, followed by the state agenda. And the state agenda will focus, we'll have a section of prioritizing capital projects that could potentially receive funding from the state. And we'll also talk about some key topics we know legislators plan to focus on. And lastly, we'll talk about next steps. So without further ado, the purpose of this presentation today is to discuss the updated proposed 2025 legislative federal and state agendas for Washington County and Clean Water Services. We aim to answer 4 policy questions. So what further refinement to the federal and state policy agendas should be made? Can the government relations team begin the process of seeking draft legislative bills for the policy concepts? And should the government relations team include the 4 new capital projects in the 2025 state legislative agenda? And are there other projects that we should consider instead of those that we've identified?
Before we move on this slide, I want to have a little conversation about the obvious. And so I'll just start with, we have some big national elections coming up in November with new president and Congress as well. But no matter who is elected, we're still going to have the needs that we have for Washington County as a county government, as well as for clean water services. And I just wanted to make sure that got said before we dive into the particulars about our needs. Additionally, for the state, we have a couple of statewide offices that are on the ballot, but we're continuing with the same governor. We'll see what legislative shifts there may or may not be in the state legislature, but nonetheless, we as a county government, what we are required to do is there's still a pretty high bar, particularly with mandates and underfunding. And so we have a lot of clarity about what we need to do. And I just wanted to make sure to spend a couple of moments stating the obvious so that we could really get into the complexity of the tapestry that we have as the county and clean water services.
Thank you, Chair Harrington. I'll pass it over to Aaron for the next slide.
As you may recall, our federal legislative agenda for the county consists mostly of principles as opposed to specific policy asks. It's a lot easier to ask for a bill from the state legislature than it is from the federal. We don't tend to change them because they don't tend to change their laws. As we heard from our federal lobby team when they were out here, normally they pass like 300 bills in a congressional session, which is 2 years. They've passed 71, and I think most of them have been budget bills. So for that reason, and this is a repeat of what we brought to you last time without any additional changes, continuing the current principles and then adding one more that really will help stretch our ability to create more affordable housing through this change in the private activities bonds process. We did not make any changes since August. We just wanted to remind you of that change. And from this, I believe it's Tracy.
And does this principle also apply to the toolkit that we have for continuing to preserve affordable housing, or does that come later?
I will need to check with our subject matter experts. There is another section when we're talking about preservation in the state funding, the PAB.
Got it.
The PAB is.
Thank you for the reminder.
Yeah.
I forgot it's state. Got it.
Okay, great. So Clean Water Services, just as a reminder, has both federal guiding principles as well as some more specific policy items that we'll be working on. Based on the feedback that we received and the conversation we had with you in July, we had no changes to 3 out of our 4 proposed guiding principles. We did change one of the principles just slightly, just to reorder and put emerging pollutants work as kind of the forefront of that last bullet item. Make sure that that one's kind of the clear piece, because we do know there's a lot of really active conversations around that particular item. So I can pause for a moment if you want to take a minute to read over that revised statement. And again, not a significant change there. Okay. All right, I'll move forward. We did not, just as a reminder, these are the proposed federal priorities. These are the first 4 out of, I think, total of 8. There were no changes that the board requested on these first 4, but I just will remind the board that we have a lot more detail that will come in the form of the narrative that we provide. We have a pretty extensive narrative that identifies particular programs that we know that we'll be advocating in support of, as well as specific funding opportunities and programs that fit under these pieces.
If I could just put a plug in for something, and it's really stating an information need for us to consider as the CWS board moving forward as we think about the next couple of years. Excuse me. Attending the NACWA conference in July, I had the opportunity to meet the executive director of the Water Reuse Association. It's a little unclear in my mind if Congress will be working on some new water reuse strategies or enabling. And so I'm wondering how, and I'm not looking for the answer today, but relative to our future 2024 and early 2025 CWS Board of Directors learning sessions, what are some of the concepts that we may need to be working on with staff for setting new policies or investment direction, or presence, more active presence with the Water Reuse Association as a board of directors. So that's what that was getting at. Thank you.
Oh, that's great. I appreciate that feedback because we do work very closely with the association and their advocacy efforts. So we'll make a note of that.
Can I ask 2 questions?
Yeah.
One's on the second bullet and the 4th bullet, and it's sort of getting what the chair was. Is there any specificity that you're going to give us on those 2 bullets?
We will, yeah, thank you, Director Rogers. We will provide that a lot of specificity in the narrative, which I believe you will have time to review. I'm getting the affirmative nod from Erin on that. So, and what we would expect to have in there is pretty similar to what we had in our last year's agenda item. Work on Clean Water State Revolving Fund for reuse, as well as Alternative Water Supply Source Program, which has been authorized but never funded. So those are 2 particular pieces, as well as some Bureau of Reclamation programs that include reuse. And then same thing on the 4th bullet. Was that your question
Yep.
as well?
Fair assistance.
Yes, and that one for us will be to make the low-income household water assistance program that was initially established in 2021 a permanent program. That funding came through as mainly a pandemic response, and so there's a lot of momentum from a variety of water utility associations to have that be a permanent program. So that would be reflected in that narrative, and we'll look for your feedback to make sure that we've worded that in the way that you'd like to see. Okay, the final 3 priorities, so there's 7 of them total. No changes to the first 2. We did revise that last item, which is a more specific policy or priority item around emerging contaminants. We had a conversation with you in July around our advocacy around producer responsibility, and really that is in the name of making sure that we're protecting the utility ratepayers from some of the potentially enormous costs that could be associated with addressing emerging contaminants. Okay, great. And I think I will turn it then back over to Erin.
So essentially, do you have any other questions or needs, or are you good with us starting to create that physical copy of an agenda for your review as part of our next steps? Okay, then we will work on that and move on.
Great. So for the state legislative agenda, for the sake of time, I'm not going to restate what guiding principles, legislative priorities, all that are. I do just want to flag that we're hoping to add a new type of priority, which is focused on capital projects. So the first priority here is secure, stabilized, and sustainable funding for services that the state requires the county to provide. There were a couple of changes since the last time we spoke with you all about this. One change made here since our last presentation is related to community corrections. After further consultation with the Oregon Association of Community Corrections Directors, We edited this language to align with their ask, which is really just to fully fund county community corrections agencies. This is related to the most recent cost study, which came out and actually reflected our costs pretty accurately. So
Could-
that was a, yeah,
Could we please be given the reference to that cost study?
absolutely. Yeah, happy to do that. We also added a point about fixing funding formulas that impact county work to address substance use disorders for behavioral health resource networks and deflection programs and other treatment opportunities. Yeah.
Explain that last one to me again.
Sure. Yeah. So the behavioral health resource networks and deflection programs are funded with a formula from that's through the Oregon Health Authority.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, I remember now. Thank
Right,
you.
okay.
I was just kind of like, I was behind.
Sure.
Back
Yeah, I
on.
moved through it really quickly.
Back
so
on.
Appreciate
Got it.
the
Thank you.
opportunity
Back
to
in the cell.
clarify.
Ready.
Great. Yeah, so this next priority, nothing's changed here. It's just about basically workforce recruiting and retaining talent necessary for.
Oops, sorry.
Yeah.
Can you go back
Sure.
to that slide? On strengthened funding for county assessment and taxation operations. I really appreciate seeing this. I'm hoping the narrative will make it clear to our delegation that if they don't do this, a lot of this is foundational
Yep.
infrastructure for every local government to function, not just the county, but every city, every special district that includes education districts, and so forth, relies upon. So if they don't strengthen the funding, that is exactly what they're putting at risk, the basic building blocks to a functioning democracy.
So should you take the word county out of there since it impacts everybody?
Well, it's the role of county government to do that. So I think that's why they have the word county in there. But I think it's a point well taken and we'll
Yeah,
have
you
them.
gave it a much broader context. Good,
Yeah,
and which we don't convey there, but we can send that message.
Staff will
Yeah.
strengthen so that it's also clear what are the state funding streams that are coming in to support this work, because different counties structure the work differently too. So we'll refer to those state funding streams.
thank you. Sorry, didn't.
Thank you. Oh, no problem.
Before we move,
Oh.
are there
Before-
any other?
Before
bullet
we
points you would
skip
like?
over
Yeah.
the,
Yep.
yeah, before we do the county recruit and retain,
Oh, wait. We have.
Is there anything further on the secure, stabilized,
Oh.
sustainable funding?
no.
No, okay. Then we'll go to next
Okay,
slide.
Great.
Now we're.
Over the years, I've worked with WSI to make certain that we coordinate with them on a lot of things. I mean, we could do that work ourselves. We don't have to be a member of that group. We could have our own workforce development. Is there a reason that we're not mentioning any sort of involvement in their part or activities with them, or is that focused only because it's from our standpoint, not working with our selected partner to work in that arena? I'm just curious.
Yeah,
Okay.
go ahead.
This has been very much written from the perspective of where we are and what our needs are as we've worked with all of our departments. I do believe that there is space and consideration that we could take to supporting workforce boards as part of the coalition of partners that work on this, but we are thinking even more broadly about what are the tools in our toolbox
This
that
is
are
about us.
restricted.
Just us?
And
Yeah.
this is about us because they keep requiring us to do more and more and with less. And we've been saying for a few years now, we have workforce challenges and they've blown by that. And we're now saying, look, our basic ability to deliver the requirements is big time at threat.
So in the past, we've used this principle to support bills that have put forward concepts like bringing state resource and technical assistance staff through DLCD to help us with permitting processes as local governments. It's also how we have supported a lot of the work around the behavioral health workforce issues that we have so that our CAT can be not just built, but functional. Also talking with the sheriff's office about how they need to use different tools for recruitments and working with HR to make sure that we have the right tools so that we can be properly compensating folks so that we remain competitive in the marketplace. So that is where we have focused this work on this principle, is across the board.
The other thing, like you said, I think it's really important is that it's a broad array of sources. Plus, even, and I think the second bullet speaks to the licensing piece, to the expectations of qualifications for behavioral health providers. So I wouldn't want to put WSI in there because it makes it too narrow.
Okay. I just think of them as being us. And so, okay, I get where you're going.
We use other principles to support the workforce development work that they have been doing in our economic development and community development principle areas.
Any other questions about this slide? Great. So on the next one, it's one you've seen before. It's about replacing the county's courthouse and getting the $1.25 million that we need in matching funds for that project. No changes since the last time we presented. Any comments or questions?
Have we ever made the case on this one? So it's 100 years old. Let's say it's in great condition. It's not. But do we ever say it's in disrepair? It needs significant issues? Or, I mean, it doesn't say that there. It just says it's 100 years old and somebody says, okay.
Yes,
I-
we've made the case 3 times
About the
since
disrepair?
I've been a commissioner in working with the system with the Oregon Department of Justice to advance this. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
And
would
we
agree.
know-
And
Yeah, go ahead, Pop.
oh, sorry. In our conversations with legislators, that point has certainly been made plenty of times. But I get your point about, the year not necessarily corresponding to the state of repair. That is it.
Yeah.
Or
I'd
disrepair.
refer to bullet point 1, modern and safe, and
Mhm.
really stress the safety. And then yes, for modern operate.
Yeah, safe and good.
Mhm.
Okay.
All right. Pass it over to, I think this is
Yeah,
to Aaron.
This
Yeah.
is me. This is me being Carly. One of the main things in how we have talked about housing as part of what the county needs is really looking at preservation of the units. It can't just be building new buildings, it's preserving what we have. In past conversations with your board, you asked for maps, unit numbers, and we've enhanced this slide and would enhance the materials to reflect this. But this map comes from the state's tracking of these expiration dates. So you can see the green diamonds are the 5 that are in the next 5 years and reflect 560 units of regulated affordable housing units. So these bullet points are changed from the last time we presented this to you to clarify and provide the information that you requested we add into this. So we feel that it's a stronger case within the bullet points. But this is about preservation of affordable units and that being a priority that we would want your board to direct us to go forth and seek the funding, not just for purposes of units themselves, but also protecting the residents as we go through the transition process for those that we cannot preserve.
Will your narrative for this also include, if I remember the general factoid, that Washington County has 12% of the affordable housing units in this category of the whole state? And then what I'm really trying to get at also is help our legislative delegation, both the Washington County legislators, but the other ones who you all work with down in Salem, understand that we have a footprint within the state context, right? Answering for them the question of, well, why is your need special?
Mhm.
That's all.
We will work on adding that. It hadn't been part of the considerations. This is why we have the conversation with you.
Yeah, great, thank you.
Any other questions or comments or further information you'd like to see reflected? Okay. And then the next has just some minor modifications between the verbiage that we presented last time to be clearer that we mean 100% consent-based special district annexations. So like what you had to go through this morning with the public hearing process to have people who all agreed to come into Clean Water Services service boundaries and do that without us having to hold a public hearing, thereby saving time, money, and resources across the board. So just some minor clarifications in this proposal.
I wanted to make sure, as I read this, while I was away, I want to make sure that, it's not just for county board, but if a bill is written, that it also applies to a metropolitan service district. Because they have to do it for certain
Okay.
ones too.
Thank you. Thank you. I will make sure that we allow any metropolitan service district known as Metro to have this permission.
Or just ask them, would they be interested in that as well?
Okay.
Because they still have to do it for properties that are within the within the metropolitan service district and dealing with UGB expansions and blah, blah, blah. It's an old historic thing, but they still have to do them.
Okay. We'll consult with our general counsel's office and with Metro about that. We also know the word annexation makes people nervous whenever you put it in a bill. I believe the final one is new and from, sorry, was there anything further on that? Okay.
Great. So yeah, this is a new priority we decided to propose, but it's focused on a topic that you all are familiar with thanks to Commissioner Willie's involvement and reporting on the work group organized by AOC and the governor's office. So this is about ensuring that any county revenue collected pursuant to ORS 530-110 that's lost through implementation of the Habitat Conservation Plan is restored by the state on an ongoing basis. Yeah, this is one that we felt would be important to include because there is some understanding in the legislature of this issue, but it is kind of seen as something that's specific to smaller, more rural counties. It's important for Washington County to voice that this affects us as well as one of the larger counties. And frankly, with a lot of legislators here in our county who might take this more seriously if they know that we're affected by it, right? So any questions or?
Yes.
Yep.
Because I'm bothered by the positioning of that we're affected by. Because I think to date, we've done a really good job of clarifying that this state funding source needs to be found for replacing timber revenues lost that are distributed through counties. Because the amount that we as a county government lose is percentage-wise kind of small compared to what school boards throughout the county would be losing.
Right.
So I'm I'm actually,
I think that's reasonable.
yeah, it's not about the county government, but it's the distribution of funds through to county entities. No, that's not even,
To a variety of taxing districts within the county,
yeah.
Including the county.
including.
Yeah, because just for your information, we give away 68% of our timber money to school districts, and then an additional percentage goes to rural fire districts and things like that. So we keep a fairly small amount of money out of the whole big picture, but we are third largest in the cultural, the trust counties.
Yep.
We are third largest. But so we're kind of carrying the banner. I know Pablo has worked with Brendan at AOC in their legislative ask as well. And so I appreciate that. So yeah, we're trying to make this a coordinated action with the AOC and the.
I just want to make sure that every time it's said, that it's clear, this isn't about us as a county. It's not, we're not distributing this funding because we're nice guys. Rather, it's because of the agreements that have been made long ago and the taxing districts that are expected to be supportive. But I am proud of the role that we've played in being active in understanding the issues and continue to support getting solutions in place. But it affects every school district in Washington County. And legislators need to understand that because they'll say, well, we're already dealing with education funding. Yeah. And this is one of the reasons why it's at further peril.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, it's a $25 million hit just in Washington County
yeah,
to the state school fund.
yeah. So,
No, in the trust counties.
And we
It's
don't
25
want
million
it,
in the trust counties, but it's still a big hit.
and we don't want it to look like, oh, Washington County's rich, that's not important. You know, if it's not a clear, widespread.
those are really bad assumptions that some are making.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's what I'm saying.
So just for context.
But you're getting at.
I will generate a list of, in the last 12 months, how much money every school district in Washington County has received through our timber revenues. It's much broader than I thought it was. So,
Thank you. Thank you, commissioners. Are there any other comments or suggestions for the language in this proposed priority?
What was the question?
I was prompting Commissioner Willie here. We had talked about transient lodging taxes and the availability of that for public safety usage.
Hmm.
And I think it was before the legislature
Hmm.
at one point.
In previous years.
Yeah.
It has been. Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know that if it rises to the legislative priorities, but
that it would be your call to tell us it does. If it is, now would be the time for us to start pursuing what that looks
It's
like.
not something that any of the AOC steering committees have added to their legislative agenda at this point.
Yeah, and years past, it has been a very challenging conversation. Anything that touches TLT. If you were to ask for my recommendation about adding that as a priority for the county at this time, I don't believe we've done the legwork necessary to be ready for that conversation in 2025. But we can continue working on it, and always will support anything that gives us more flexibility in how we spend our own funds.
Yeah.
Pursuant to principle.
thank you. It came up in a discussion and I thought I would raise it here.
Thank you. With that, I think we're turning it over to Clean Water Services.
Oh,
no,
there's
we
just
did
one
it.
more. Yeah. And this should be pretty short. There's been no changes to this county's specific guiding principle for health and human services. So yeah, I think we could probably move on to.
Wait a second.
Oh.
There's news and modifies.
This slide has not changed since the last time we presented it to
right.
you.
That's clearer. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Great.
Okay. I can be hopefully quick with this as well. For the Clean Water Services State Legislative Guiding Principle, there have been no changes since our last conversation. Again, this is broad, intended to capture all of the variety of things that we might encounter during the legislative session. So unless there's comments, questions.
Yes. I'm looking at this now and realizing that we talk about quality of life throughout the Tualatin River watershed, but if we have new state legislators, they might not understand that quality of life means business and industry as well. That's all.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I think we can work to capture that and maybe a mention of the economic strength or vitality of our region.
I think I'm just with the underlying reason for my looking at it with somewhat fresher eyes, given that I haven't looked, I've been away for 6 days, is how many new legislators are we going to have? You know, it's happened in the past, so I have to remind myself, ooh.
I heard that
Yes.
number from somebody, not from the face. You guys, off the top of your head.
That's my head of
And Elizabeth's like looking quickly.
Well, it's half of the state senate is up for election
Yeah,
and
and-
all of the House of Representatives, but I don't remember how many incumbents are running.
Not that I do political prognostication for a living, but in looking at the elections that are ongoing within the Washington County delegation. We don't expect a huge turnover within Washington County itself. It is the remainder of the state that I definitely don't have a crystal ball for. I don't even have a crystal ball for our outcomes, but that's not my job.
Thank you. I didn't mean
Great.
to rat hole us there.
Any other comments or questions? Okay. All right, moving into our legislative priorities for the state. There was only one revised priority from our conversation that we had in July. And that is that second bullet item, and that is ensuring sufficient funding for Department of Environmental Quality for their water quality division. And the feedback we received from the board was to provide the why. Why is that important? And it's important so we can promote efficient and effective permitting, tools, strategies to achieve our water quality standards, and implementation of innovative approaches.
Great.
Great. And then are there any other questions, comments before I move on? Okay. The final legislative priorities, there were no changes made to these remaining priority items. So these are the same as what we discussed in July. So I'll pause for any comments, questions. Okay. And I'll move on to, I think, Erin. Okay.
So I think we've gotten a lot of the refinements of the state policy agendas that you are looking at what we've presented today. So we'll consider that question answered unless you have further comments. But the big question for us is, given that there is a deadline at the end of September to do initial bill drafts, are you comfortable with your GR team going out and asking legislators for those things that are necessary to seek draft legislative bills, which we can choose at a later date if you decide not to move forward or circumstances change to not actually have introduced in January? Do we have your thumbs up on that?
I'm totally.
Yeah, basically placeholder.
Placeholders
Yeah.
or intelligently written placeholders?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. And with that,
Great. So, and finally, as we alluded to earlier, we're proposing the addition of a new principle focused on high priority capital projects that we think could receive state funding through the legislative process. We've provided a memo that's in your packet with additional information about the projects we're prioritizing. And, just to give you some context of why we decided to do this, as we reflected on previous sessions, we determined that it might be possible to secure funding for multiple projects. And of course, we don't want to leave money on the table simply because we didn't ask, right? So with that in mind, we reviewed the county's capital improvement plan and the fairgrounds master plan, and worked with county leadership to identify several projects that are high level priorities for the county that could also be politically attractive targets for investment by the state legislature. I also want to be clear that in making an ask to the legislature, that doesn't mean that county leadership isn't pursuing additional funding sources for these projects. This is just one part of a multi-pronged strategy.
So if I could, I appreciated the memo in the packet that you had for this. But the section on West Side Commons, I was in agreement with all that was said there. But my comment was this, that I want, if you're using this narrative for anything, I would like to see a little bit more about how West Side Commons is a public community resource for hosting meetings and events of all sizes. Because that part was missing to me. Why is this something that we're asking them to support? Because of the community nature of it, that's all.
That makes sense. Thank you, Chair Harrington. So just taking a step back for a moment, I want to provide some background on what's formally known as the budget reconciliation process and informally known in the legislature as the Christmas tree bill. You may have heard of that. I think in our previous presentations, we've talked about that a bit. So near the end of each legislative session, a bill that contains funding for a wide range of projects in a variety of legislative districts is developed, and it tends to pass with pretty robust bipartisan support. That's the budget reconciliation process or Christmas tree bill. And getting a project funded through this bill really requires a lot of collaboration with legislators who communicate to their leadership and budget writers that it's a high priority for them. And it's important to ensure that key legislators are not opposed to the project as well. So as we discussed in our State Budget 101 presentation earlier this year, these projects are commonly funded with general funds and lottery bonds just because they have a higher level of flexibility than other sources of funding. So at this point, for various projects that we've put together in that memo, we haven't decided which sources of funding to pursue. And we would do that once we have more clarity from legislators on which pots of funding have the resources, have more resources for those projects. So as we consider how to strategically advocate for those projects, we really aim to raise awareness, to elevate our projects as regional priorities, collaborate with the Washington County Legislative Caucus, which includes many high-ranking legislators in the Capitol, and of course, build coalitions with relevant stakeholder organizations.
Can we pause here for 1 second? I'm struck how over the prior 6 years, some of what we have needed has been put at risk. And it's legislators being proud of supporting what they consider innovative policy changes, for community corrections or racial justice needs or social justice needs, or how there isn't enough money, so no, we're not going to support grants at a particular level. We're going to trim here, there, and everywhere so that we can shift that money over towards the state school fund or education funding or things of that nature. So I want to make sure that I think in the agenda part that you've articulated our various needs very well. But where we've lost out is at the reconciliation part. It's not just projects, but things like the grant funding for what I consider basic community government building blocks, assessment and taxation grant funding, community corrections grant funding, and then there are capital projects. So I felt the need to highlight here that we have found that these thematic things, or I have seen these thematic things that state legislators really tout after the session has come at the cost of a bunch of this basic government work that they're stealing from Peter to pay for Paul, and it's hurting the community as a result. So I just need to get that off my chest. That's I guess.
Thank you, Chair.
As was outlined in the memo, those are not intended to be the narrative descriptions we would place in any agenda items, but we wanted to seek your thoughts and feedback before we add to what the agenda document might look like to include these capital projects. Courthouse is obviously already in our priorities. That's been something that your board has put forward. But the next 3 for Washington County are those capital projects. We have had conversations as a GR team recognizing that a lot of our requests are about full funding, and what comes first for us is priorities. And if there becomes capital project money available, opportunities to really walk with our caucus, these are ones that have those moments of joint pride to provide services to our community and make them safe if an emergency happens, for example, with the Walnut Street Center and even the West Side Commons, because we do use that for emergency shelter, for fire evacuation, and a building of community generally. And then the Scoggin Creeks Visitor Center, making sure that everyone is welcome there. All of these projects have their pluses and minuses. And as we would go through the process during the session and the budget numbers become clearer, coming back to your board to ensure that we are meeting your top priorities for how we are able to provide the basics of services while balancing the needs to maintain our facilities to a standard that they survive and thrive. So these, the Walnut Street Center, the West Side Commons Master Plan, and the Scoggins Creek Visitor Center are all projects that we believe can build upon your expectations for what we need to do, but are at the end of session, we come back and make sure we are meeting your needs first and foremost for the county. With that, I think that Clean Water Services also has one that they would suggest.
Okay, great. And this project is probably familiar to you all. So the Western Washington County Inflow and Infiltration Rehabilitation Project. We have advocated for federal funding for this project, and we were fortunate to be successful through Congresswoman Bonamici's process for community project funding last fiscal year. The project is around $6 million. We received just shy of $1 million through that federal process. So we are grateful for that. I know that she was hoping to get more for the project. And really what this project is the repair and replacement of aging and deteriorated sanitary lines and laterals in the city of Forest Grove that serve the city of Forest Grove, Cornelius, and Gaston. And we're getting groundwater that is coming into those pipes and is overwhelming it and exceeds the capacity of those pipes, as well as the treatment facility, the water resource recovery facility that's out there in Forest Grove. And so the downside, if we do not replace those pipes, is that we run the risk of potential sanitary sewer overflows, so environmental and public health issues, as well as then potentially needing to trigger a premature upgrade for capacity at the water resource recovery facility. So we would be looking to acquire any additional state funds that we can to get the bang for the buck that we need to reduce down that inflow and infiltration of excess water and flows that are coming into those pipes.
So is your pitch, because those are three small cities, fairly low income cities, certainly diversity in those cities, has that been part of your pitch, and does that help?
Yeah, thank you, Director Willie. And that is a good question. Certainly there's a local cost share that has prohibited us from moving that project forward. And certainly the potential impact to the ratepayers in those areas is something that we have as top of mind for why we're prioritizing that request and that ask.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to put something on your radar, not necessarily you're going to add to this, but I think it's future boards, one of the biggest issues that they're going to run into in the I&I area, and that's in the city of King City. Before I ever got on this board, the city of King City was a master plan developed by Ron Sorensen and 12 Development Corporation. And what they did is they ran public sewer lines under houses. We know that because about 3 or 4 years ago, or 5 years ago, for those on the board, we got to hear the wrath of the public in that area because the county approved the plans and the lines were put in. Someday, and by the way, the city, as my recollection, never accepted that sewer system. Part of the clean water system, part of the county for having approved it. So my only awareness is that someday some board is going to get a major uprising there about, let's get those lines in the right of way. Let's deal with the I&I, which is a major issue, not only the relocation. And so it's a future problem. And I don't know when you start to chip at it and look at it, or when you would ever get the city to transfer those assets, because I suspect I've talked to leaders in the past and they're not about to accept them. They know that they've got a substantial liability, but whose responsibility is it going to be? And this is a multi-million dollar issue that this board, both boards will face in the future. I don't know when. We've seen one little piece of it, but we're going to see a lot more. So I just want to bring it up because it's going to happen.
I appreciate that, Director Rogers, and we'll take note of that. And kind of, I think we can come back and provide an update to you as well as what we know about that particular project. And certainly we've got I&I challenges throughout the region. So any ability that we have to chip away at one project for us is helpful as it frees up capital to do other projects and to do more with the revenues that we have. So
for clarity, Director Rogers, this is a separate project and issue topic separate from the neighborhood that has a private sewer line system.
What Chair was asking, if you didn't hear, was it was a neighborhood who brought the issue up, but that's just one small fragment of the total population. It's much larger, to answer your question, much larger issue. So
But the right-of-way issue with regard to these pipes, from your vantage point, is primarily with the city of King City, and we may possibly have this issue in some portions of unincorporated Washington County.
We could. I just know about that study. Yeah, you're right.
Appreciate that. We'll flag that issue and note that for further discussion internally.
That's a footnote in the financials.
Yeah, it's a big one.
So switch, following up to back to the policy questions, are you comfortable as a board with the GR team adding to our legislative agenda document to include, in addition to the courthouse capital project, these 4 of Walnut Street, Westside Commons, Scoggins Creek Visitor Center, and the Western Washington County Inflow and Infiltration Rehab Project? That's the first major question of adding it into the agenda document. And then we'll
Well,
bring it.
the 4,
So it's the 4
we're-
new, because the courthouse is
yep,
returning. Yeah, I had to remind myself why we phrased it that way. And just wanted to make sure that you, as you had gone through the capital improvement planning process for both agencies, we didn't miss anything as we talked with our experts, just double checking with you that we've got the right list for 2025 for now.
Yep.
Okay. Seeing thumbs up or general head nods, we will very quickly, in respect for the time that we have left, we've changed it from hot topics to legislator topics of focus because it's their ideas, not our hot topics.
Right. And yeah, for these topics, we also wanted to kind of shift the focus towards the highest priorities that we already have guidance on through various policy frameworks adopted by this board. Right. So, behavioral health and substance use disorder, we expect that will again be a hot topic or a state legislator topic of focus in the next session. And included in that, medically assisted treatment for opioid use disorder, civil commitment, and the funding formula, of course, for our burns and deflection programs.
And then on housing, of course, our focus is on preservation funding, but we know that the state will continue to look at expanding the number of units that are available. And then in the transportation package, that's obviously going to be a fairly sizable conversation in the 2025 session. We know that on September 27th, the Joint Transportation Committee will be coming to Washington County. They will be hosting, we've heard over at the Hillsborough Civic Center, despite our best efforts to offer them much better facilities here in Washington County. We are working with all of the folks we know that need to be part of that transportation conversation here in Washington County to ensure that we have a really well-balanced and representative roundtable, a very comprehensive tour, probably focusing on TV Highway, and a cohesive conversation when they do their evening meeting. We're not certain that anyone is going to agree with what we think their agenda should be, but we're doing a darn good job of telling everyone what it should be. With that, I will move us into our next steps. This slide gets tinier every time I write it, and now I know why my doctor says I need reading glasses. In October, we're going to spend some time, September through October, we will be reformatting, creating that initial draft document for your consideration. We will be back on November 5th to review what the physical copy of the agenda will look like, go through all of these talking points, make sure we've captured your thoughts that you've directed us with over these last few months. And then we're hopeful that at that point in time, you'll be ready for your action at a board meeting, guessing the 19th, but we'll work with Clerk Moss to make sure it's scheduled on a day when it's not 400 public hearings. And then in December, we are now tentatively going to try and host a meeting with your board and the Washington County Caucus before your roundtable on the 5th to talk about our legislative agendas. It's well after the election, so our elections division has time to go through their process, make sure that we have all the newly elected and re-elected caucus members invited to that event, and it'll be Washington County specific and Clean Water Services go through those agendas in December. And then we will start in January, because Lord knows, can't have a year without a session. We need a budget. just as a reminder, this is the state's interim calendar, now in a size font you might be able to read. But that first red box is the 27th of September is that the initial request for draft bills deadline. That just means that those bills will be available on day one of the session. We can still ask for bills after that. They just not be ready until a little bit further along, so they have to be in better shape. That's the end of this month, and then we'll move into the future months as the legislature does. Any questions?
Yeah, I need a reminder on the light green boxes task force. Is there one particular task force that I have forgotten, or there are multiple?
If the legislature has task forces that are meeting, they hold this day during legislative days, so legislators have a consistent day to look to on their calendars. But they meet all the time anyway. That's just their official date to meet in public, like consistently.
Okay.
I'm not aware of any specific task force that's meeting that day.
Thanks for the reminder.
Thank you all for your time. This has been a really fun and long process this year, but I think it's been more effective in addressing county and clean water services needs. We appreciated your time.
Great. Thank
Thank you.
you. All righty. So we're going to take a 15-minute break at this point and return at 2:25. And we'll pick back up with leadership communication and then board communication. Thank you.
All right. Welcome back, commissioners, and back to you, Chair Harrington.
Great, thank you. So now we're going to go through leadership communication and then board communication. And first up, we're going to cover CWS. So Elizabeth Edwards.
Thank you, Chair. The good news is I've already spoken too much today. So as far as leadership announcements, we'll keep it very brief and just a hearty thank you, especially on behalf of our CEO, for the board's warm comments about the Peak Awards. In talking with our staff afterwards, they really deeply appreciated and felt very recognized. So just a thank you on behalf of CWS staff there. And that's it for us on leadership announcements.
Terrific. Onward, ho we go. We'll switch over to Washington County. Go ahead.
Yeah. Good afternoon, Chair Harrington, commissioners. I know we're all, still in shock that it's September, but I have to say personally, I'm very excited because summer vacations are over and we're back to full staff in our suite. So I'm personally very excited. One thing I did want to mention to you all that I'm really also grateful for is Community Corrections in the One Washington County spirit had applied for and secured a grant from the Oregon Department of Justice to do some trauma-informed training. And in their thinking, One Washington County offered some of this training to various departments that particularly work with individuals who have experienced trauma, which does include our office, as we do have visitors to our front counter looking for just general help. And then as well as some of our cases do require us to work with individuals who have experienced traumatic events. So I'm really pleased that they included us in their outreach for this opportunity. And I'm really pleased that we're getting to send one of our paralegal staff support people to a training next week. So really excited to see what she learns and to bring that back and start implementing some of those techniques in our work with the community. So thank you to Community Corrections. Thank you to your board for supporting this.
Great. Terrific. Ms. Angie.
Well, good afternoon, Board of Commissioners. Yes, summer vacations, and I think school is in full swing. Officially, so us who are working parents know where our teens are at during the day, and that makes me relieved at all times. So moving on to elections, Washington County elections, we currently have 21 drop sites for voter convenience. Due to our jail construction project, we do need to relocate one Hillsborough ballot drop box, which is currently located in the sheriff's office parking lot, which is the P11 lot. The proposed site is the parking lot on the west side of the Public Services building, this building. Staff have been working collectively to evaluate the potential sites, and so that west side is the P3 lot. And the reason we chose this lot is for overall voter convenience, traffic impact, safety, logistics, and also public transparency as having a really visible spot. We do anticipate voters will utilize this drop site for the 3-week period with the highest volume of drops actually coming in the final 2 days of election day. We do, with all of our drop sites, take significant planning in place. I want to appreciate the leadership of our elections team. Tomorrow is the monthly city manager, special district manager, county administrator meeting, and I have asked Joe Nelson, Dan Forrester to come and talk about elections, as your board has received constituent questions regarding elections, safety, security, just our elections process. Cities are receiving those too. And so I have received that request. So I look forward to that conversation tomorrow. And we are quickly approaching the November 5th date on your rolling agenda. There is a board update on elections. It's scheduled in the rolling agenda. We typically do that just to, from a public transparency, just to provide any updates and also an opportunity for your board to ask questions that you may get during the elections process from constituents.
Before you move on, might you know where this P3 lot is relative to this building?
On the west side of the building,
Yep.
it's right there.
Yes, so P3, I believe it is going to be in essence right back in this.
Okay,
this
so
lot.
not across the railroad tracks, but
No, no, but let
behind
me-
the actual
Yep,
building.
yep.
Great.
I would also like to direct your board's attention to an email that you received today from Washington County Emergency Manager John Wheeler. The Weather Service has issued an excessive heat warning effective noon Thursday to 10 p.m. on Friday. This includes dangerously hot conditions with temperatures around 100 degrees. Overnight lows will be in the upper 50s to the near 70s, warmest in our urban areas. As John discussed in his email, we will be watching this. The cool weather has helped within recent days. However, we have had excessive heat. On Thursday, areas on the east side of Washington County, specifically from Cedar Hills to Wilsonville, and the coast range of the foothills will be the major risk areas of the county. So we do urge community members to exercise caution as we navigate this really almost unseasonable heat wave during this time of year.
His email doesn't say it, but the chart below, this is where I need a little help.
Okay.
Talks about the maximum dew point, which I think is the line I'm supposed to pay attention to relative to humidity. So what I'm trying to figure out is, I get the part about the excessive heat. 100 degrees in September. Ooh, not good. But I remember back with the Labor Day fires in 2020 that not only was it the heat and the wind, but also the humidity was very low. And so I'm having trouble figuring out, oh, minimum RH, is that relative humidity maybe? So that's I haven't opened the attachment. So if any of you know, if you could steer me in the right direction, that'd be awesome.
I will connect with Mr. Wheeler and then provide a written email update on that.
Okay,
board, as
that'd
far
be
as
great.
how this compared to the most recent.
Yeah.
With the levels of humidity.
Great.
On the, if you go on the weather app, like now it's 56% humidity. Now it probably doesn't give you, but the next 10 days, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, off in the 90s. So anyway, yeah, that's where I go.
So it doesn't sound like it's dry.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is where I have confidence in our emergency manager and I phone a colleague.
Yep. Awesome.
Also just, drawing your board's attention to, this Sunday, we did, start our deflection program. I have received notice, as of this morning, we do have one individual that has become eligible for deflection since Sunday. So, staff are monitoring this. Our, public information officers have been getting questions from various media outlets. As we understand, other counties are, because this is of significant interest. And so we're working through those requests. And that concludes my update.
Well, and I think the briefing email that we received on deflection, the end of last week, raised up that the city police chiefs thanked all of the collaboration and the training material made to their police forces. So for your city managers meeting, if that might be a
Math work.
good news piece to uplift.
Yep.
Great.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments for the CAO? Terrific. Well, board communication. Before we actually go through our board communication, I would like to have Aaron Doyle join us up at the table. I believe I had sent you all a summary before the holiday weekend. That's all I can say about how the Tri-County Chair meeting went with Council President Peterson. And with that, one of the next steps, well, it was very clear in the meeting that the council president has been designated by the council to serve as a negotiator with the 3 counties. And they're trying to make changes legislatively before the end of the year, preferably before the end of September, on the things that they believe they can move forward legislatively. And then by the end of this year, but potentially leading into the beginning part of this year, have clear understanding of what they would refer to the ballot for May 2025. So, you know, as we've talked previously, they are planning to go to the ballot May 2025 with a tax cut rate of some kind. Since then, we had a straightforward meeting to occur this next Wednesday. We have 2 particular points that we need to work out. One is finances. You know, Metro has been throwing numbers out in all kinds of different ways, and we need to have a joint understanding on that. So we had planned on having a meeting sometime this week, including the 4 of us, along with a finance person, so that we're all clear, we're all heads are nodding in the same way.
4 of us from the Tri-County chairs and president.
Yep.
Okay.
In addition, Metro, as I've covered before, has been proposing, in addition to the tax rate, they've also talked about changes in governance and oversight. And so they have some thoughts on that. But we gave the feedback, look, we need to get on the same page about financial circumstances before we get deep in the weeds on oversight and governance. I have also raised questions about, well, the voters approved a measure that was spelled out in the voters pamphlet per their referral, and I'm not as comfortable with saying they can unilaterally make legislative changes on this as they seem to think. Some of what has transpired in terms of asking for clarity has not yet been shared, despite thoughts that it would be shared. So it's a little more messy than I would like. Nonetheless, I continue to move forward, but true to my style of making sure that you're on this journey, you have information. Part of what our staff has tried to do is be clear about the financial information that they report to Metro per the requirements, but also the financial information that the department is required from our financial auditors to report. And towards that end, the work session packet has been updated to include a memo from our staff to us about these differences. And as you've heard from me before, this has been a very frustrating journey because there are different parties at Metro saying, well, we've given you that information, and I come back here and I check with staff. So did you get this information? And they say either yes or no. And when it's no, I'm left in the situation of following up with Metro people and saying, you told me this, you want me to believe this, but this is my reality. So we're still going through that process of understanding reality, which includes one of the things I did on the flight on the way home was catch up with the HBA magazine of September, and there's no less than 3 different articles talking about SHS and repeating some of what I claim are false narratives from Metro with regard to supportive housing services. Ultimately, where does this leave us? Clerk Moss has also sent to us the updated rolling agenda for September. Okay, so I have at least one meeting this week, potentially more, with Metro prior to our work session next Tuesday. Okay, next Tuesday, we do have time on the agenda to catch up with whatever the latest and greatest is from Metro. Why is it important for next Tuesday? Well, Metro is saying they want to move at the speed of Metro, that they would like to have legislation by the end of September to move forward these things that they think they can decide legislatively at one of their business meetings. As we highlighted earlier, we don't have a meeting on September 24th. We only have 3 different Tuesday meetings this month. So I sit here today with less clarity than I had before I left, or from our last Tuesday go around, because I've gotten some response from Metro on questions that I've raised, and they just don't make sense. So our staff is trying to do their best to make sure that I go into Metro meetings with clear understanding and can be a representative to you. Let me circle this back to this memo that is in our updated packet. We can certainly touch on it some more next week, but I really think we're going to have some deeper information to go over next week. So I brought Aaron Doyle up because I wasn't sure if Molly, this is a memo from Molly Rogers, our Director of Housing and Homeless Services. So as she had told us at our September 20th board meeting, our team went over the year 3 Q4 results and told us about the results for the entire year 3 and let us know that they were going to have to report all the fine detail to Metro by the end of August. And so this memo that she has sent to us talks about what those finer points are. Why am I spending any time with you on this? It's because I cannot estimate what the press is going to say, or even what Metro is going to say about the year 3 final numbers. Okay, so it could be a wild ride between now and next Tuesday. Not that we need to necessarily be on a wild ride, right? We don't have to act wildly no matter how the ride goes. But I want to make sure that you have this information so that you continue to have confidence that our team is reporting finances per the Metro requirements and per our financial auditors requirements. They're not always the same. So it gets a little wild for accounting for these things. Part of what our team went over with us on August 20th was what they have delivered on, what they've been piloting, the various subcommittees of the Homeless Solutions Advisory Council, and being true to our goals for year 4. Metro is now saying that the actuals or their forecast for year 4 revenue is less. They expect the collections to be less than they're forecasting. So as our team had presented, they did outline the next steps that we'll have to go through in terms of how to deal with reductions for year 4 revenue. All of that is separate from these various changes that the Metro Council has proposed. So we're trying to figure out how to best use our limited meeting time so that I get advisement from you so that you understand what you may be hearing or seeing through Metro meetings. Commissioner Treese, for example, as the chair of MPAC, may be hearing certain things. Things are just not as clear as I wish they were. So I appreciate your patience.
May I ask a question?
Of course.
So the memo that is in our packet
Yep.
today, that's a memo to us. It's not, we're not going to be, this is just discussion of the contents, correct?
And that email was also emailed out by Orford on Friday, so.
Yeah,
so it's just.
It's the
placing
same
it
one.
into the.
Okay. We're just kind of shining a light on it right now.
I will note, I plan on sharing this memo with city managers because cities have been receiving presentations from Metro, and the numbers reported by Metro as far as SHS taxes collected and distributed in Washington County are not the same numbers that we see. So I'm also getting questions from cities. So in that spirit of sharing, this will be shared tomorrow.
Yep. It's really disturbing that we've been getting, it's disturbing to me that we've been getting the revenues implemented here in Washington County, achieving good community results with partners, helping our community-based nonprofit partners grow their staff and their scale, just like we've been doing ours. Our team has been implementing the reserves requirements as well as the suggested levels. The 15% level, for example, has been very clear about how the prior fiscal year carryover funds were being used to build the required capacity. And yet Metro keeps pumping out messages that cast doubt on the ability for, I'll just leave it to Washington County, our ability to invest these dollars into action in the community. So thank you for asking questions. I hope we'll have more to tell you next Tuesday about these conversations. Certainly, I hope we'll have clarity in terms of what does the forecast look like for future years, given various proposals that Metro is considering. And which ones do they think they can do carte blanche? And which ones do they think they'll need to go back to the voters on?
Sharon, thank you for that background. I have a question about the memo we got. I have to tell you, there's a lot of different numbers. I hope the background you gave could be accompanied this memo as well, because that was really a good information. And thank you for sharing everything that you sent to us. It's hard to track these numbers. I 100% agree. And I had to reread this like 2 or 3 times. And I have 2 questions. I'll try to be succinct, but hang in there with me. The numbers about the FY 20, sorry, I don't know where my,
What page
why
are you
is it
on,
my
do you
phone?
know?
Yeah, I'm on this page. Computer gets dark sometime. This
So
one,
page 2,
page 2.
I think.
Yeah, page,
Yes. The second page of the memo that's titled FY 23-24 forecasts and actual revenue received.
actual, yeah.
Yep.
So December 12th, 2022, this is what was forecasted.
Mhm.
And then where is the number that shows what we received for that year?
My understanding of the actuals, so the Metro actuals and the Washington County actuals are the amounts we received either in that fiscal year as we report it or
I see.
fiscal year as Metro has told us to report it. So
Uh-huh.
September through August is how Metro has asked us. The actual numbers that we received in that fiscal year are the last 2 columns of that chart, depending upon which months you're covering based on Metro's instructions or our financial auditor's instructions.
Yeah.
I see.
And then that difference gets further compounded
Yeah.
because in a memo or in a document received from Metro, just on the 20th, they stated in that document that Washington County received 149,600,000 in revenue, but gave us no explanation where that figure came from.
Yeah.
And that document was shared with the State Council.
Okay.
So we're just chasing confusion after confusion after confusion.
Yeah. And then, so now discussion on the recommendations in the memo. This is very confusing and is this something, Chair Harrington, that we're gonna give thumbs up? And one of the things that stood out for me is bullet point number 1, where in parentheses it says projects awarded funding through board action but not yet distributed,
Awarded.
projects awarded.
That
Yeah.
is the definition that we're using for committed funds. It
Yeah.
means that those funds
Right.
are available. to be
They
spent
are
and
committed,
they're
right? But,
committed. It
yeah.
just means that you've given the approval, but we haven't actually written a check.
Right, but that is our approval and we are sticking by it.
We've already
Yep,
been
we are-
doing that. Okay, so in that first bullet, we've been, the first bullet has 4 lines. Okay, we've been doing lines 2, 3, and 4
Mhm.
already.
Right.
But what we now have clarity on through this memo is the difference between the Metro financial reporting template and the Washington County one per our financial auditors. So what they're saying is, we're now going to be clear about these two as we move forward. We've already given them the direction to be clear on reserves, on contingencies, on being clear about the committed revenues from the carryover.
Let me give a couple examples, and I'm speaking to those 2 parentheses.
Yeah.
So first, let me give an example of investments planned through board direction, not yet awarded. Through the SHS program, we have issued NOFA. So CBOs, others could then submit applications. So the board direction was go through this process, but the contract, we had to go through the process to award. So that wasn't done yet, but we're following the board direction. Projects awarded funding through board action, but not yet distributed. That would be a specific project or effort that has been on the framework that your board has directed, but maybe we just haven't finished the contracting. So following board direction through this, but those are 2 kind of separate categories of work.
And that is intended to clarify what we actually have as available carry forward for expenditure versus what we are holding on to pursuant to the requirements of the ballot measure and good budgeting practice of contingency and reserves.
So once your board gives direction, we view that as those dollars are to be directed to that purpose. They may not have been allocated out or awarded because we have to work through a process, but they are directed to that purpose. So they cannot, in our mind, staff's mind, be used for any other purpose but that. Mhm.
And
that helpful?
I've been very comfortable that that's what our staff has been doing. But we have to make sure Metro's clear about that.
Yeah.
On the second one, on the balance carry forward, we're having the opportunity of seeing how Metro's been talking about these designated categories, reserve, contingencies, carryover fund. And they make it sound like there's all just one big bucket of dollars that isn't being put into action. Well, it's not, because you expect us to hold these dollars in the event of not great things happening, right? The actual collections aren't happening. And so reserves are going to have to be utilized to make up the difference, or we cut funding. So we're just writing down the difficulties that we've been facing with Metro and what we're going to do to continue to try and be clear about it. On the third one, this is really how this memo is providing this clarity on the different revenues and forecasts between the Metro timeframes versus our normal fiscal year timeframes. Everybody clear on that one? And then on the last one, our team's going to keep working with the Metro team, and we need to just be very formal with them about what we're going to do with differences, because clearly we've been acting like a partner, but the result isn't a positive one. So we're going to have to move forward in a clear fashion. These aren't necessarily policy changes, but given the situation, this is how our staff is planning on being more formal in these steps moving forward.
And I think it's about transparency to the public. So as they report their quarterly updates to the board, it is clear that apples are being compared to apples, or apples are being compared to oranges. And whatever is actually being compared is clearly explained to anyone reading the reports that we put forward.
There's a little bit different piece too, and that we're talking about brass tacks here, and saying these are, we've got to compare the funds or the dollars appropriately. There's also the piece, and it's not in the recommendations, I don't think, unless it's this last after the comma, how this information is used to influence the public. That's the part that I don't, I don't know how I don't know if it's appropriate to say this in the recommendations, but I think all of us feel like the information, the way it's been presented, there's an ulterior purpose here, and that is to influence the public that the funds are not being utilized. That's.
Well, I actually
And I'm
took
saying that in Metro's communications, obviously.
I don't know that Metro's intent has been to mislead the public. I think Metro has had a difficult time understanding pressures that the council has received, and that they have acted in some really unusual ways that have jeopardized a lot. And they've not been communicating very well at all.
And let me clarify, I don't know that I meant mislead as much as misinformed by default. How's that?
I don't know. I don't need to go there. What I have seen, for example, in the last round of tri-county SHS tri-county planning body meetings and the Metro Supportive Housing Services Oversight Committee meetings is when when committee members ask questions about certain things, Metro staff isn't proactive in correcting understanding. So they leave things unaddressed. And it's just caused confusion. So it's not helping anybody. And they're having trouble within their own organization operating as a clear organization as well.
And I would also say, I think that fourth bullet point in that final sentence of it is to say, we want to have this conversation between the two reporting agencies before the reports are public, as opposed to having two competing reports out there and then trying to argue about who has the right numbers in a public fashion. It's not effective. It's not clear communication.
And that's why I made the caveat that I think perhaps after the comment, it does address this issue. So we're still at the same place, which is understanding what the revenue picture is on common terms, and then also making sure we retain local control. Is that in a nutshell?
I think that's what we're hoping these next two meetings are.
No, we want the clear finance picture, and we want to make sure that governance and oversight, those are the two things. It's not a local, the local control is part of the governance, but it's not the full governance and oversight.
What I like about the last bullet point is hopefully having a shared definitions will facilitate shared language and shared understanding. Hopefully will clear up a lot of the confusion. So here's the hoping.
That is what the financial people tell me is the goal.
Yep. Yeah. There's a lot more to this than I ever imagined.
Chair Harrington, the other counties, what are their reactions to this? I've not seen anything in the news about. I think this is a lot of burden. A lot of conversations are happening at the staff level, and at one point we got to talk about that cost to the system as well. What are the other?
So towards that end, the 3 counties are in agreement that the Metro, the timeframe that Metro wants to move these things is at a faster timeframe and requires more from the counties than we are in the position to give.
I agree.
As I reported out from that meeting with Metro Council President, the best we got was an acknowledgement that the counties don't have the bandwidth. That's the best we've gotten. So things, I was disappointed that the Metro Council President, as the lead for the council, continues to have a train moving down the tracks, and the county partners are not being given the opportunity to support that effort. So we're doing the best we can, but this is the result. Having clear memos here that state what we're able to do and how we're going to go about certain aspects of this But this memo isn't even the harder stuff about forecasts, all these variables that they're using on the finance side, and then what they may be proposing on the governance and oversight part.
So really negotiating, but not really negotiating.
Still, they have a problem hearing us.
And the other county commissions are also having conversations in their work sessions around this. I haven't summarized them or listened to all of them because I can only listen to our board. But the conversations with those other commissions are also ongoing and also equally is expressing skepticism and frustration.
Yep. Next Tuesday, hopefully we'll have more, hopefully we'll have more concrete proposals on the table to share.
For the sake of transparency, should we reach out to our own Metro counselors in our districts? In addition to what I think my line of direction of communication has been, hey, this is the letter we sent, this is where the board is, just sharing the board positions. But should we, how can we help? And how can we help you?
It's
to have
too
to-
soon.
Okay.
Okay, give it another week and we'll talk more next Tuesday.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think that's fair.
That's fair. I'm happy to wait. I'll be here.
All we have is just some more confusion since our conversation on the 20th.
So I'll bring back my question then. I'll ask again.
Yep.
Okay.
So sorry for a lot of time on not much meat on the bones.
Oh, thank you for your service.
Oh, but
Thank you. You too.
that was just that topic under board communication. Now we're going to do normal board communication.
More fun stuff.
Who wants to go first?
I can go first. I'll go first for a change.
You go first.
Especially before Commissioner Willie assigns me to go next.
Right.
Couple of my highlights from last week include, one, I had the opportunity to attend the Better Red Project celebration along with Commissioner Pam Treese and Commissioner Jerry Willie.
Mhm.
It was a lively event with food, DJ, and dance lessons. Everyone was very enthusiastic. I think what's absolutely critical to remember from that celebration, that it was a celebration of progress, innovation, and moving the region forward. And for me to stand up there and say thank you to TriMet for a job well done, sort of felt like an understatement. And it felt like sort of a full circle moment. Back in 2001, when the Max Red Line began, I've only been in America for about 4 years, and we relied on the transportation. And a lot of those TriMet bus drivers really made a difference. I have a wonderful memories of them being kind and welcoming and generous, and it just brought back those memories, and really was a great celebration for our region.
Were you the speaker for Washington County?
Yes.
And what were the key points that you made?
Key points I made, Washington County, we're really a great region. And what else did I say? Said a lot of good stuff. I was on the news, so I must have been a great, what I said. But thank you to the staff who wrote my talking points. We mainly focused on really how we're being innovative in this region and how we've been a partner, and how Washington County, we've got a lot of great, we're an economic engine of Oregon, and how this opportunity, there was a 10 stations that is in addition to how this 10 additions will facilitate opportunities, employment, and job creation. So that was the main focus of it. And then I shared a little bit about what public transportation, the impact public transportation personally had on me, and So it was a really great, and then there was also two other Washington County speakers. There was Mayor of Hillsborough spoke as well and spoke about the impact the Better Red will have in terms of the economic employment and opportunity, just the quality of life and the livability, how it will increase for the city. And then Mayor of Beaverton, Lacey Beatty, also spoke and shared the same. We were all saying the same thing. I think our staff did a wonderful job. The transportation staff just to highlight the value the Better Red will bring from employment and economic development perspective and what it means to the climate and whatnot. And then, 2 minutes. And then the second highlight is from last week. I visited the Hillsborough Family Shelter and had the opportunity to tour the 6-bedroom house, which provides essential services and temporary housing for families in need. The house was very well organized and was also designed to also operate a food pantry program that was free to anyone in need, no matter their zip code. So that was really something that I didn't realize. I thought it was just a food pantry program for Washington County residents, but they don't turn anybody in need away. And however, they do connect. Let me emphasize this point because it's really important that they do connect those who are outside the Washington County to food pantries that exist those different counties they reside. So while they don't turn away, they do provide that connection and resources. And the staff were very attentive and compassionate, offering a range of services. I think it would be more correct to say the visit highlighted the critical role shelters play in our community, offering hope and stability for families with housing challenges and facing housing insecurity. And it just breaks my heart to see anyone homeless, let alone elderly and people with small children. And there were people with small children and that were occupying in those rooms. But all in all, my time ran out. But all in all, it was a great week and great highlights.
Great. Who would like to go next? I can go next. I also attended the Better Red Max Extension in Hillsborough. The one person you didn't mention was the FTA Assistant Administrator, and her name was Veronica Vanderpool. She talked about the federal investment in the in Max, and she talked about how our region has been effective in using dollars. So that was good. And the port was represented there as well as Sam DeSue. That was the other person you mentioned.
I only focused on Washington County.
Yeah. So it was a good event. And then when we rode from Hillsborough to Beaverton, Congresswoman Bonamici was at the Beaverton station waiting. So we had a chance to talk to her too, and then back. So
Yeah.
it was a big event, but and the weather was good, so it was good. This past week, I took Thursday and Friday off for a staycation, so I don't have a lot to report there. I do have the ERMDAC meeting coming up this week, and Thursday I've got briefings with our auditor, and then we have a coordinating committee meeting for the MPAC meeting that's going to be on September 11th in the evening. So there's 2 MPAC meetings in September. The first one on the 11th, we're going to be discussing the COO recommendations. So there'll be clarity around what those recommendations are. And I think it's going to be a very lively discussion because the density issues are not matching up between Metro and the Sherwood Concept Plan. So there'll be discussion there. Then on the 25th of September is the night that MPAC will actually take the vote on the UGR. So that's, there's 2 meetings upcoming. So we'll have a chance to talk, and I believe that Stephen Roberts and team are going to be making a presentation on the 10th to us. So we'll be able to talk about your direction to me in relationship to the vote. So I'm looking forward to let's see, on Friday, I'm going to be completing some trainings for my new appointment with the governor's regional solutions team. I'm also going to be attending the Plaza Los Amigos grand opening. And the following week, I just want to make sure I remind you that we have an acre meeting on Monday night, the 9th. Also a swearing in over at Washington County Sheriff's Office on the 9th. Then on the 11th, that's the District 8 meeting.
And we have the AOC meetings on the 9th.
Yes, thank you. The District 8 meeting, Erin is working on finishing up the agenda right now. I don't think we're going to have the same number of legislators there that we had last year. There's a lot of conflicting meetings around that time. We're working to get people there. As far as the event itself, I suspect we'll still have around 50 to 60 people. It's going to be at the Wingspan. There'll be a catered lunch. I have sponsorship support from PGE and a little bit from Explore Tualatin Valley as well. So we're working through all the final details there. I don't believe, I'm looking to see Maida's here. There's spotty representation even from the commissions, because if you remember, we have commissioners who in Multnomah County and in Clackamas County who are rolling off, and I'm a little worried about their attendance, frankly. We know that the chairs will all be there. Our chair, Chair Smith, and Chair Vega Peters.
And then we have the roundtable on Thursday.
Yes, yes. I was just hitting kind of the things that I'm worried about. Okay. Great.
Wow. Well, yeah, as I told you, last week, I've been hitting the cities, 6 cities in District 4. And I have got Hillsborough tonight, so I'll be going to that later and just updating them. Yep, also attended the TriMet Better Red. And it, like you said, both of you said, it was a great event. And lots of people there. There were 9 speakers, I think, but it was good. Weather was perfect, and certainly they did a great job on catering. It was good. I already had my check-in with the auditor last week, so that'll be interesting. We'll compare notes. And then again, we resumed our forestry meetings on Friday. So we had a 2-hour meeting with the small table, and Maida and I have already talked about providing the financial information that goes to the schools and how much money we get as a county and how it's allocated. So I can give you that for the last year's information. And then there's a lot more to that. And the chair has asked me to kind of put a little bit of a recap together. And so I'm going to be doing that. I'm very thankful that Pablo and Brandon with AOC have been coordinating what our legislative position is going to be. I think we are going to submit a bill that's like we talked about earlier. There's going to be a placeholder that's got to be in by September 25th. So we're working on that as well. So a lot more information to come on that, but that's every Friday for 2 hours. So that takes care of my Fridays.
So part of what we need to make sure is clear in terms of a write-up before us is we're in this situation because the state chose to adopt an HCP, which has its advantages, but it also has its effects, and they're detrimental effects.
Yes, ODF has been ODF recommended this HCP to the Board of Forestry. They're the ones that adopted it. Now it goes to the feds. Feds have to accept that as meeting their criteria. So that's still more to come on that.
But clearly there's a cause and an effect.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And if you really want to get into the weeds, I have a 70-year harvest forecast from ODF. And there's some years in there where it's going to be really lean. So the harvest is very, very small, more than projected initially, but big surprise. Got a fair board meeting tomorrow, and then again have the ALC community developments and transportation meeting, as well as the small table on Friday. So not sure how that's going to lay out, because they're a little bit on top of each other, but we'll work that out. So fortunately, I can do those hybrid, so I'm not traveling to Salem on for all of that, but I might. Anyway, so that's all I got.
Great. Commissioner Rogers, anything?
Couple of three things. One, Nafisa, thank you for speaking. I didn't attend the red because I just got back from vacation. My ears, as you know, I can hear you today, which is good. Not full blast, but I can hear. So I thought maybe it was the best. In the last week, I got an opportunity to go to the viewfinder with Molly Rogers and Congresswoman Salinas. She happens to represent my particular area, and wasn't too many questions of us at all. It was mainly of the property manager and what was happening. Also, I had a great discussion, Pam, with Tim Rossner, and Tim assures me that I think he's, depending upon where the numbers are at, his council asked may be quite different. So be prepared for changes in what they're doing. He's very adamant about that. So that's interesting. This week, I have a Work Systems Inc. executive meeting tomorrow. Unfortunately, I can't tell you what's on the agenda because once Jenny retired, she was our longtime assistant. The new person doesn't quite got the idea yet that you got to have an agenda out so we can all look at it, but that's okay. She'll get it. So that's Wednesday, Thursday. I have a meeting in regards to a WEA, transportation. It has to do with this subcommittee dealing with revenue sources, trying to figure out how they supplement the ODOT budget. And I only speak for myself, but I tell them that there's three legs to the stool, and they need to look at not only the ODOT resources, they need to be assured by ODOT that they've done everything to fiscally look at their house of expenditures. That we call that a balanced budget, and we do it here. The other thing we did with Misstep, as you might recall, a program, we looked at our inventory of assets, prioritized and said, okay, which ones are we going to maintain? A state system would be state facilities, the big facilities, and maybe you can't do stuff for smaller facilities. And I try to encourage that, and so they're listening. On Friday, there's a key leaders breakfast. I think, Chair, you sent out a message, but I'll be there. That's Chris Strickler, who I think many of you know, he'll be speaking, as well as Susan McLean, and I think Don Odermont, who most of you know, he'll be there as well in some capacity. And they're again speaking about, tolling a little bit, but not a real popular subject in that neck of the woods, but they're looking at revenue sources, and they'll be talking about that in general. And Jerry, to you, thank you for taking a look at the schools. I've been in that space a long time, and it's not just the forecast of revenues for last year or two. These folks are out forecasting 3 and 4 years out. So this is a major hit for a lot of those school districts. I knew that would be the big push out, as I privately told you one day. So thank you for taking that into consideration. That's one that is so important to them. And the state school fund, for those who don't know, is a bitter battle of limited funds. So it's not always assured there's going to be dollars. And so I'm glad you're looking at that, and you're right on top of it.
Yeah, well, the governor's proposed to give $500+ million more to that fund.
Yeah.
But we'll see how that flies. So.
Yeah, just a little bit here, a little bit there. Anyway, that's what I have coming up.
So, you're our WEA board rep. And, we just received a new newsletter from WEA today. And, they have this new blueprint, that has been published, which interestingly just talks about economic development tools and incentives, land use, and transportation, and does not at all, from what I can see, highlight how WEA has actually had a seat at the table on this Metro SHS reform. So I don't know if you'd planned on, as our representative, evangelizing this blueprint to us and asking us for any input as the board of directors moves forward with this.
It's a good question. What that is that that's a subcommittee, just like this one of the transportation. It's the only thing that I have attended. I'm not on that group, but the only thing I've attended is where Lynn Peterson came and spoke to that group in regard to the exact matter we talked about. And in fact, I talked to you, Catherine, about that, how I said that maybe her perception of what was partnership might be a little different than the counties. And you and I chatted about that issue, but that paper that they're talking about has, and I've talked to Elizabeth about it just very briefly, it's not very comprehensive, in my opinion. That's just my opinion. So am I going to evangelize it? Not particularly. Once I hear that what the board is doing, if they're accepting that, how they're going to treat it, then I will certainly bring it back.
Well, from my read of it, it does look like it's on the board of directors. So, yeah. So, yeah, okay. As for me, I reported out last Tuesday and then left to be out of the office on Wednesday for 6 days away. And now I'm back in the office today, Tuesday. So I don't have any further activities to report on other than the continued navigation of the Metro SHS stuff. So, yep, that's it. And that's between that and the focus for the roundtable next Thursday, our normal business stuff and AOC meetings. Don't have anything more to highlight. So, yep, we're full on in September. Onward, ho we go. So, go. Anything else that needs to be highlighted before we adjourn? Nope. I think that's it then. Great. Thank you. Onward.